Welcome to the Perth Entrepreneur Podcast with me, Neil Gibb, where each week we use the stories and journeys of other successful business owners to motivate, inspire, and empower you to become the next breed of successful entrepreneurs. So this week on the show, we've got Amy Jacobson. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil.
Now, you are an emotional intelligence expert.
I am, so they say.
Yeah. What does that actually do?
What does emotional intelligence do? What it does is I've got a real fascination for emotional intelligence and a fascination for the human behavior side, in that we have so much potential as humans. And I think our emotional intelligence is often forgotten about. But the emotional intelligence side is all about us, like what makes us tick, what's going on in our mind, what causes the reactions that we have to certain situations, where did our beliefs and values come from? But it's also being able to look and think, what is the impact that we have on other people? How do we make other people feel? How well are we communicating? What words are we using? And how motivated are we? So it's really emotional intelligence that encompasses who we are, how well we do it, and why we do it.
Right. So it's kind of like how we react to different situations.
Yes.
Different environments and, different things that happen at work, for instance.
Yeah. It is our reactions in everything, but it's also our ability to, how much are we leveraging who we are and how well do we know ourselves? How really well do we know our own identity and what we're capable of? So it's taking it up a notch when we're looking at ourselves and others.
Yeah. So we can basically dig in a little bit deeper, find out what our strengths are and work out how to use them even more than we already do.
Yeah. I think a lot of the times when we look at what we're capable of or what we're doing, we quite often try to become something different, or we've got this picture of our mind of that perfect person, of what we should be. Emotional intelligence is understanding how we're wired and why we're wired that way, and then working with it rather than against it. So how do I leverage that? So when I say that, we've got so many different fears and we've got ways that limit us or change our reaction in situations. And a lot of the time we think we need to break that or change it, where emotional intelligence is not so much breaking it or changing it, becoming someone that we're not. It's understanding it, appreciating it, and working with it rather than against it.
Right. Okay. So I'm guessing emotional intelligence is very important in business.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is. I always like to say that I think it's IQ that will get your foot in the door, but it is emotional intelligence that will get you promoted. It is emotional intelligence that will grow your business. So when we look at some of the most successful businesses and people out there, the one thing they all tend to have in common is emotional intelligence. It's not about what you know, it's about how and why you do it.
Yeah. So what's the difference between IQ and EQ then?
Yeah, so IQ is referring to your actual intelligence capability. So it is very much, if you were to think in the workplace, it's your technical ability to be able to do a role or understand it, or that skill-based side. It's your ability to be able to learn something and implement it and apply it. So your IQ is your intelligence level. When it comes to the skills of that technical side, your EQ or your EI is referring to how well you do it. So if you can picture, for example, people as they come out of university that are very book smart, very content smart. They know, they've gone through and they've done their degree and they know everything about that technical area that they might be going into. However, when they get into the workplace, they need to find a way to be able to communicate it and how to get along in the office and how to be able to implement it and why it works in different areas. And that's where the emotional intelligence comes in. So I think we've all probably known someone out there that is technically fantastic at their job, but they're really not a nice person to work with. And that
I've met one or two of them.
Yeah, I think we all have. And I think that's the biggest difference between IQ and EQ, is that you can be really good and really high on the IQ path, but if you haven't got the EQ to go with it, it's only going to get you so far.
You're right. So it's safe to say that if your EQ is high, then you're more likable.
Yes. So definitely people with high EQ are definitely more likable and they understand other people. So there is an element of EQ that we need to put our own pride aside, and it becomes about other people too. So, communicating with people becomes not about us, and the communication becomes about how do they need to hear this in order to get the right outcome.
Kind of like empathy, using empathy in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
right.
you've touched on probably my most favorite skill out there.
Yeah.
And I truly do believe that empathy is probably the greatest skill that anybody can have ever.
Yeah.
And it's not rocket science, empathy. However, it is totally different to how our brain is wired, which makes it challenging.
Because we're used to being sympathetic instead of empathetic.
That's exactly right. So
Right.
we're used to either being sympathetic, or we're also used to, when anyone is in a high emotional state, especially if it is anger or fear or shame or guilt, our brain tells us to try to diffuse the situation. And to try and diffuse the situation, we're trying to put the opposite emotion onto them. So if somebody's really angry, we're trying to get them to calm down, like calm down. However, we know that when the mind is in a highly emotional state, the last thing they want to be told is to feel the opposite to what they're currently feeling.
Yep.
So empathy is challenging in that we need to rewire our brain to be able to be empathetic, because it goes against the way that we've wired our brain through our childhood years and up until our adult years.
So instead of saying calm down, what's the empathetic way to approach that situation?
So I'm going to throw this one back at you, Neil,
Oh.
and say, if you were really, really angry sitting here, what is the worst thing I could say to you?
Stop being angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is the best thing? What would you want me to do? If you were really, really angry, what is it that you want me to do?
Ask me why I'm angry.
Yeah. So when somebody is really angry, actually, I'd say when somebody is in any emotional state, even when somebody is ridiculously happy, like super happy as well, the first thing we want in any highly emotional state is for somebody to stop and listen. Like when you've got a high level emotion, you want to be able to get it out. You want to be able to show people that you're in that highly emotional state. Once you've shown them, you want to make sure that they understand exactly what state you're in and why. So that is that second stage, is that being able to go, okay, for you to be able to say, yeah, Amy knows I'm really angry right now, and she knows why. Now, to be empathetic, I don't actually even need to know why. Like, I just need to know that you're really angry, and know that a really angry person, how did I last feel when I was that angry? And what is the best thing that somebody could say? What is the worst thing that somebody could say to me? So it's really about recognizing how to respond in that emotional state based on how I have felt in that emotional state previously. I don't even need to agree with you. I could be looking at you thinking, you're totally overreacting now.
And empathy is a good way to start a conversation too, isn't it?
Empathy.
Because you're asking them how they feel, why they feel like that. And that can lead you down any amount of rabbit holes, can't it?
Yes, yes. So a huge part of emotional intelligence is about asking questions. Instead of telling people answers, instead of making statements, the human brain, as humans in general, we don't like being told what to do. Unless it's an emergency or a fire or a crisis, or unless we don't know what to do and we ask somebody, we don't like being told what to do. So going in any communication mode with questions rather than answers or statements is always going to be better. And asking people questions, what we do is we get past that conscious mind and into the subconscious mind. And the quicker you can get somebody into their subconscious mind, that is where you're really finding out the truth about them and the truth about why they feel the way that they do and what's actually driving it, the beliefs and values behind it.
So with emotional intelligence, do you study the brain and how the brain works too? Are you into all the...
I'm fascinated with the neuroscience side.
It's crazy, isn't it? I'm just getting exposed to it now, and it's like quite scary.
I absolutely love it. I have a lot of people that come to me and say, what are some great books to read? What do you, and for me, it is all about the neuroside. For me, I love to learn about how the brain is wired and what's happening, and then the impact that the neuroside has on the whole physical side of our body. And to me, then that's where I get a lot of my research and my study, because once I understand that, then I can connect it to the neuro-linguistic side, which I'm fascinated with as well, the neuro-linguistic programming side, to show, okay, this is how the emotions come into play with what's happening chemically in the brain.
That was my next question. So have you studied NLP?
Yeah,
right.
I do love NLP. I think out of all of the studies and stuff that I've done, it was probably the most profound study I've ever done. I think, I did, one of my NLP studies was 7 days straight in doing workshops, and it breaks you. it breaks you to a vulnerable state. I think it took to day 6 for me to break. And for other people, I saw them break earlier. But when you break, boy, do you break. I think the way that I explained it to someone is I felt like my brain and my heart had literally been sliced open and exposed. Just everything felt vulnerable and exposed.
Yeah, right.
And I can remember saying to my trainer at the time, I walked in there on day 7 and I said, you need to stitch all this back up. Like, I cannot walk out of here today unless this is all stitched back up. And I loved it. It was definitely life-changing for me. And I think to bring that NLP side in with the neuroscience side and into the workplace and in that emotional intelligence is just, it's my passion.
Yeah.
That's my why.
Awesome. And your business is called Find Your Why, isn't it?
It is. It is. So it's interesting, actually, because when I brought out my business with Finding Your Why, I've had a few really questions around where does that come from? Some people actually ask me, is the why related to Gen Y, which was a massive compliment for me because I'm certainly not in that category anymore. But and I had other people ask, is it related to Simon Sinek and his why?
Start with
why is what Simon says. But the name for my business actually came from the fact that I am one of those people that just asks why all the time. So whenever people have come to me telling me how they feel or frustrated or not being happy at work, especially in the workplace, I am that person that has always turned around and said, why? Like, let's find out why. So, and still to this day, I think if adults could do one thing, just one thing more every day, I would say ask why. As kids, we try to stop kids from asking why.
When they ask you 10 times, it gets a bit frustrating, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I think if adults asked why more, we would be a completely different place and time and people.
Yeah. Right.
So that is where the name of my business came from.
Awesome. So I want to take another step back then. How did you actually get into all of this?
Yeah.
Because it's not your typical career path, is it?
No, it's not. It's completely not. So if I go back to my teenage years, I think like any teenager, I went through different cycles. I actually ultimately wanted to be a singer or a dancer on stage. Like I think most young girls, I lacked talent, a lot of talent. So that was never going to happen. But I also had that fascination. I've always had that fascination for people, fascination even in teaching. And I had a psychology fascination. So I started to dabble in the psychology space and I quickly learned that I'm very much a high visual and kinesthetic person. And I could not switch off. So the thought of doing psychology, and when I say psychology, criminal and forensic psychology is what fascinated me, to think how could somebody's brain be wired that way to actually do that? I quickly realized that I would not be able to switch off and separate that work and what you see as a forensics and criminal psychology to the outside world. So I decided that was not the path for me. And I landed in insurance, which was no one, I think, ever leaves school and says, I want to be in insurance. But I landed in insurance and I absolutely loved it. And I still love the insurance world. I was in insurance for over 19 years.
Right.
In life insurance and then in commercial insurance and general insurance. And I loved the side of helping people in that. I worked for a really quite large organisation that was taken over and merged a few times. But throughout that career, I had a lot of opportunities to work with people around mentoring and leadership and emotional intelligence skills. And what I found is that I was put in different pockets of the business where teams were quite lost or underperforming or disengaged or the culture was bad, to try and help people build their emotional intelligence and their leadership skills and their purpose. Yeah. So it took me a long time to work out what it was. And at the same time, I had that fascination for speakers and inspirational people and facilitators. So I was starting to do a lot of facilitation and training on the side. And I'd started doing all of my NLP studies as well. Right. So, and I think it just, there came a time where I thought success was a certain measure in the corporate world of that job title and pay packet. And I got there and it didn't feel any different. And I thought, this is clearly not success because nothing's changed. And I realized that my whole passion was around that emotional intelligence. And I thought, I want to help more people. I want to create break through this misconception of EI out there and show people how much difference it can make to a workplace.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had high EQ for a long time then, because if you were getting moved around into different roles and working with teams that were struggling, somebody obviously seen the potential that you had there to put you into them positions to work with them people that were struggling.
Yeah, I think they actually knew more than me at that time. But I think too, it was that real challenge to me. In my mind, I kind of always said, I was asked the question so many times, where are you heading, Amy? What is it that you want to do? And for me, it was always about being challenged. As long as I'm challenged, I'm happy. And nothing makes me happier than seeing somebody step up to that next level in themselves due to something that I've helped them do. Like if I can play a part in that, if I can help people to become that better version of themselves or to take it up a level, to me, that's just the ultimate. So once I started to realize that and could see, and very much I'm a big believer in now, those roles I only stayed in for a maximum of maybe 2 years, because by that time, there's only so much that I can give to people. And then they need to be able to take that on themselves. And then they need somebody else and coming from a different angle. So being able to move from team to team and see some of those underperformers become superstars, and to see some of those people that were in the completely wrong job using the wrong skills find another job within the same business where they became that superstar. It's the best.
Yeah.
You just can't beat it.
Bet it is. And I'm guessing you still get them kicks now when you're working with people and you see them increase performance.
I do.
Yeah.
Every week, I think I always encourage everyone that I work with to contact me anytime. And the emails and messages that I get through just absolutely warms my heart. I think there are still pinch me moments. I had one just earlier on this week. I ran a session on Monday for a school, and went in to help out with their culture, and touching base with the principal the next day to say to him, that on the Tuesday night, to say, how did it go? How did the rest of the day go? And to hear him say that he felt like there was a massive difference when they turn up to work that next day, just within a 24-hour period. It gives me goosebumps. I just think, wow, like that's what this is about.
Yes.
Like sometimes I think, did I kick them too hard? Did I push them too hard? And then you get messages like that and you think, no, that's what they needed to hear. That's what they needed. And if they can keep that going, that's my element.
It's good.
That's what I
You've
love
really
doing.
turned your passion into your profession, haven't you?
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
But you know what? I like to explain to people too, because I had never had an intention to become self-employed, to run my own business, never ever. And I think that we need to understand that even when you find your own passion, I've got my passion in my business, but there are still days that are tough. There are still days where, when I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to work today. And I think it's realistic for people to understand that even when you find your passion and you find what you love, you're still going to have those challenging days. Not everything is going to be amazing and, over the moon. Have those days where you question yourself. Have those days where you think am I doing the right thing? Or those days when I'm doing things that I don't enjoy doing, like we were talking about before. There's so many parts of a business, so many parts of my business that aren't working specifically on emotional intelligence with people. So yes, well, I found my passion and I absolutely love what I do. I want people to understand that, even I have down days. Everyone has down days.
Oh, everyone does. Go on there. So who was your first client when you first went out to work for yourself? Who was your first client? Not specific names, but what type of person were they and what results did they get?
Yeah, so my clients have changed quite a bit. I think when I first went out, the same as we do into any business, you have this vision, and I had my business plan ready to go and I rolled it out, and at that time I had a couple of one-on-one clients that had come through and we're doing individual coaching programs. They were amazing. I think they took a chance on me as well, and to see them go through those programs, and I'm still in contact with them now, to see them actually go through it and really become self-aware of who they are. There were some moments in those programs, I think, where they really took a step back and went, and to me, this is the light bulb moment, right? When people realize, well, maybe it's not someone else's fault. Maybe it's not about them. Maybe it truly is about me, because I'm the only one that I can control and change. So my first couple of clients will always be dear to me. I always thought that I would have most of my clients in the insurance industry, given that was my connection, that was my network. However, I was really lucky to branch into some other amazing industries quite earlier on. So some industries within engineering space, some within the teaching space, retail, and I do a lot of work with WA Police, which I absolutely love.
Yeah,
so
wicked.
There's some of those government areas in there as well.
Yeah. So what are some of the bigger clients you got? Are you allowed to name them?
Yeah, I probably can.
Yeah.
I can name the ones that are on my website, I guess, because they're already out there. So, the WA Police is probably one of my biggest clients,
Yeah.
I think. And I love the fact that the police are working so hard on their emotional intelligence. I think that is so important to be in there. Some of my other big clients are in the real estate areas, like your Colliers and stuff like that. I'm working with a lot of your government areas as well, as in the WA Electoral Commission, City of Bayswater, some of those big spaces there. And I do still have a lot of insurance clients as well that are in there as well. Rio Tinto.
Some of the bees.
Yeah. So there's actually it goes across every kind of span, and I do get asked, what industries are you most aligned to? But I think if there's humans involved, emotional intelligence is needed, and every client that I work with will tell me that they're in the worst state, that they lack emotional intelligence, and that their industry is in the worst position for lacking emotional intelligence. However, every single industry, it's the same problems. I hear exactly the same problems across every industry because humans are humans.
So there's no specific industry where you thought, there's more work in this industry than others?
I tell you what, the government areas they're very different in that there is very long tenure. So when I work in the government space, you tend to have people that have been there for 20 plus years.
Yeah, good secure jobs.
Very good secure jobs. And there's a lot of process-driven areas rather than people-driven. So there is a lot of people that have probably been that way for a long time and potentially got away with it because that's just how they are. Where the corporate space that I work in, and especially retail and things like that, there seems to be more of a turnover. So you're getting fresh people coming in, and we know that in the corporate space, they tend to revitalise their managers and senior leaders quite often. So you're getting that change come through. I think if I was to say the one industry that I would love to get into that I cannot seem to crack yet is the government, in that politicians. I think our political area at the moment, more than anything, I watched another Twitter video the other night of Victoria's Parliament as they were sitting, and that probably sparks and triggers anger in me to think that there is such a low level of emotional intelligence within the political area that is currently running not just our country but the world. And I would love to see a higher level of emotional intelligence in there.
I think half of Australia would, eh? Maybe more than half.
Oh, I think, it really would make such a difference. But I think as for the other industries, same as even, like I work a lot with SME businesses as well, and that's different again because they're a different size company and different people coming into it. But I think every workplace out there has got the potential to be so much greater when we bring that emotional intelligence area in, whether it's recruitment, whether it's, whatever space it is. It's got the opportunity to be better. Yeah.
So have you authored any books?
Oh, thanks for asking, Neil. I have recently landed a book deal with Wiley.
Well done.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. So the book is written. I was a bit naive going into this. This is my first book. I didn't realise that it takes so long for publishing a book. So the book is written, but it takes around 5 months to publish a book, to go through the full process, which is exciting because it's done so thoroughly when you're going through professionals like that. So my book is due out on the 1st of May is when we'll hit bookstores.
1st of May?
1st of May next year.
Wow, that's a while away, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But we will have pre-release starts, I I think actually no, the audiobook and the ebook all comes out 2 weeks prior to that.
Cool.
But pre-orders will start in February next year, end of February.
Cool. Are you narrating on the audiobook?
I'm not actually.
Oh,
no.
why not?
And this is funny. This is a conversation we've had this week. And unfortunately with COVID at the moment, it does limit the narration side because they're the company that are doing the audible books based, they have pods, they call it, in Sydney and Melbourne. But I have to say, I'm all about outsourcing to people who are experts. And I think even though I speak for a living and, you know, I'm a keynote speaker and I deliver presentations, there is a big difference between narrating a book to an international audience compared to standing on a stage in front of an audience.
Okay.
There's even a massive difference to delivering a virtual keynote or training session to there is to an audience. So a narrator is basically a form of an actor, and they sit in a booth for 2 to 3 days and read that book. So they are sitting there and they'll read a line, and then the voiceover will say, reread that with more emphasis on this word, or pronunciate that word in a slightly different way. And you know what, Neil? That is not me.
Yeah.
That is not me. So once I heard that, I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to leave it up to the professionals.
Yeah. So what's the name of the book? Are we allowed to know?
I can tell you a rough idea of it.
Have you not chosen it yet?
We have.
Oh,
we have chosen it. But I get a bit excited, Neil, and I've started to tell a lot of people, and I do get the call back from the publisher saying, Amy, maybe just tone down a little bit on it so that there still is some element of excitement and surprise when we go to pre-sale. So it is a book specifically on emotional intelligence. That will be the main title, and then there's a subtitle that goes with it. But the whole approach of the book, and look, the reason why I wrote the book is I get a lot of requests from people asking for book recommendations. And while there are some great books out there on emotional intelligence, I've found a lot of them still to be quite complex. And I think you need a certain level of emotional intelligence already to read them and really to take it in. So I set out to write a book that simplified emotional intelligence, turned it into things that we do every day, but also made it really actionable. Because I think sitting and listening to emotional intelligence speakers or reading a book, you think, wow, but the gap between reading that and knowing how to implement it is quite big. So my book is it's very simple and it's very actionable, and there's tools throughout it for people to be able to immediately start to build their emotional intelligence.
Awesome. So I have read one book on emotional intelligence, which is Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Bradbury.
Yes.
And I did the little test as well.
Yep.
But we did discuss this, and you said the scores that they use are different to the scores that you use. So I don't know if this bit's going to be quite relevant, but
tell me, what are your highest rated in?
Highly rated in social awareness, I got 74. So if anyone that's not listening, when you buy Emotional Intelligence 2.0, you get access to an online quiz. You fill out all the questions, and they rate you in personal competence, self-awareness, self-management, social competence, social awareness, and relationship management. And like Amy asked there, my highest score is in social awareness, which was 74.
Yes.
So what are we looking for with social awareness?
So social awareness is pretty much how you interact with other people. So very much your communication side, how well you understand what other people are thinking or feeling, and how well you understand what that person needs from you. So if you're standing there, like, communication is not about us, right? So if you're standing there in front of somebody, your social awareness will tell you, based on their body language, based on who they are, based on their background, their values, their beliefs, what they need from you and how they would need it. So very much in the workplace, if I related to the workplace and leaders, a great leader knows that their leadership style needs to be completely adaptable to the people in their team, and that each person in their team is going to need a different type of leader from them.
Yes.
So to roll out the same style to everyone, if you're rolling out a message to your team and you're saying it the same way and delivering it the same way for every single person in your team, there's a good chance that not everybody is going to be on board. So social awareness is giving you the ability to be able to communicate in a way that works for the person that's hearing it, to be able to get through that conscious mind into their subconscious mind and have have them agreeing and on board as quickly as possible.
Interesting. It's a good job I've got a high score then, because our team has grown quite fast and
That's
we've got
it.
all different personalities, all different people.
Yep.
Yeah, wow.
And I would have guessed that your social awareness would have been high, Neil, because I think that generally when you meet somebody people that get along with other people really quickly, so people that are quite approachable, people that make friends, that have kind of that wide where people say, yeah, everybody likes that guy, he's great, they generally have high social awareness.
Cool. I suppose it's also good having that score if I'm doing a podcast, because I need to get on with the guest really well, don't I?
Yes, exactly. If your social awareness was low, you probably wouldn't be running a podcast. Well, not a successful podcast, that's for sure.
So my lowest score was self-management at 65.
Yeah. So self-management, also known as self-regulation, I refer to it as face it, is I think by far the toughest area of emotional intelligence to nail. And what it's about is it's once you know who you are, but it's how you respond in certain situations and how well you can regulate. So it is knowing that if you're in a situation that triggers a certain emotion with you, how well can you control that emotional response and reaction that's happening? And look, a lot of the time that is a chemical emotional hijack that's happening in your mind. But how well can you identify it fast enough to be able to regulate it and control it, and even to the point change how you respond in that situation? So it's challenging and it takes time.
My wife tells me that I need to work on that. Yeah.
Most people struggle with it. And look, I teach emotional intelligence, and there are even times I know when I go home to the kids and, I've had a big day, they've had a big day, and they'll say something and I'll respond and I'll think, wow, that wasn't very emotionally intelligent, Amy. And even now, sometimes my kids pick me up on it and go, Mom, I don't think that was very emotionally intelligent. Damn, so it's something that we need to work on all the time.
And it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. I do feel like I read people better than I read myself sometimes. Yeah,
that's your social awareness.
Yeah. Cool. And I've read some stat that 90% of communication is through body language more than actual verbal communication. I feel like I pick that up really well with people too. Yeah. You can tell when they're pissed off and when they're not.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to bring up too, because I think, a lot of us learned at school as well that communication is more about body language and tone than it is about the verbal word. And these days, in a very much a technology world where a lot of communication is done online or via technology, when there is no body language to see and there is no tone to hear, we simply make it up.
Yeah.
So that is why there is so much, when you look online, there is confrontation and disagreement. Why emails can cause so many problems these days is because that tone and that body language is not there for the person receiving it to be able to comprehend and understand. So their brain will simply make it up, and they'll make it up based on how they're feeling that day, who the person is, how it's come through, what's happening in that moment. They will make all of that tone and body language up.
It's no wonder the world's in such a mess, isn't it? We can just make all this stuff up.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. And our brain needs answers. I mean, look at all the conspiracy theories out there at the moment. We're programmed to have answers to things. And when we don't have answers, we make them up.
Why are we programmed? That's probably a good question, but why are we programmed to be thrive on negativity?
I don't know.
Why are we hooked on the news? Why do we like hearing all these things that are going bad, but there's never any good stories in the newspapers?
Yeah. I think it is more of the shock value. It is hearing something that is out of the ordinary. So if you picture people that are in really, say for instance, we picture the police, or we picture doctors or nurses in emergency situations. We know that the longer that you do that job, the less shock you get when you turn up to things. Do you know what I mean? Like your expectation levels change. And people in some of those jobs say they get a bit numb and they, switch off to and it is based on the fact we watch the news and we watch these negative things because they are so different to what is happening in our life. It's like the polar opposite, right? So our brain is fascinated with it, thinking, why did this happen? And then we can't help but even bring in that judgment when we hear something happen. We think, why didn't they just do this? Why would they do that in the first place? Why would they be in that situation? And it is very much our mind looking, going, how is that so different to what I do? And that is something that I don't know about. So it's like we want to stop and hear it to learn. But then we've also got that part of our mind that has been programmed since we were young, all through school, to be right. Like we've been rewarded for being right. So then in that situation, we're trying to think of things that should have happened so that that didn't happen. Well, why were they driving that fast in the first place? Or, why did they leave their kid in the car? Or, everyone's trying to think of the answer to it. And we're seeing that a lot with COVID at the moment, where everyone's minds need an answer. Like, why did this happen? Whose fault is it? It needs to be somebody's fault. And yeah, unfortunately, that's how we're wired.
Can it be fixed? Can it be changed?
It can be. Is it easy? No, absolutely not. All of this wiring comes down to our beliefs and our values. And our beliefs and our values, the core beliefs and values, are created between the ages of 0 to 7. That is when the hard yards happen. So for anyone out there who's got kids under 7, no pressure or anything, but 0 to 7 is where we really create it, right? After the age of 7 is when we start to have those defining moments that start to question our beliefs and values and may change them. So for instance, if I use a really simple one like a football, right? Like most kids follow the same football team as their parents do, but then they get to a stage where they're like, well, I don't want to go for that team anymore. I want to go for a different team. Same as religion, same as, politics and all that kind of thing. So we create those foundations of what our beliefs and values are, and then we start to change those through defining moments. And those defining moments give us the opportunity to reprogram our beliefs and values. So it is possible to reprogram those beliefs or values. The easiest way is through those defining moments, or it is through building your emotional intelligence. In order to do that, very NLP side, you need to be able to draw back and know what is it that created in the first place and why. And is that still relevant to me? Am I willing to let it go? And what kind of confirmation do I need to be able to embed a new belief or value?
And that's a lot of work for your everyday Joe too.
It is a lot of work. Yeah. I would say you're going to need a little bit of help to do that.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Do you mind if I ask you about the other two parts of the scores that I got?
Go for it, yes.
So some of the middle ones, so my self-awareness came in at 69.
Yep. So self-awareness is all about understand that this is where your beliefs and values are pretty much the core of your self-awareness. So self-awareness is understanding the why you are who you are. Like, what is it that you defined? Like, it would come back to me, asking you that question, Neil, like, why do you get out of bed in the morning? Like, it's understanding what is your emotional drivers, because in some point, everything that we do in life is for an emotional outcome. Like every industry that exists, every product that exists, everything that exists in this world was created to satisfy an emotional need for a human. So self-awareness is working out what is it that is your emotional driver that gets you out of bed every morning, that wants you to run a podcast like this, that has you talking to people, that has you running your business. It's about understanding what is those core parts of you and your mind that you're driving towards, or that. And I always say to people, like if you get to the point where you are heading towards the end of your life, what is it that you want to be able to tick and say, I did this because it made me feel like this. So that's where self-awareness is. It is really drawing down onto those core beliefs and values and understanding what makes us tick.
Very interesting. And the last one was relationship management.
Yeah. So relationship management, this is where your empathy lives.
Yeah.
So different to your social awareness is all about being aware of what's going on and how you're communicating. Your relationship management is where you're actually forming those relationships. And those relationships are with everybody around you as well, including to a certain extent yourself, but also the people that you work with, the people you live with, your family, all of that kind of area, and how they feel when you walk away.
Yeah. Kind of similar to social awareness.
They all go hand in hand. Yeah. They all go hand in hand. Your social awareness is just going to have more of that communication element to it, where your relationship management is bringing in that empathy element to it, the feel side to it. If I refer to the language that I use in my practices and in my book, it is the social awareness side is more of the ask it side. It is more about the communication, asking the right questions, using the right words, where relationship management is about feel it, and it's all about feeling what other people are feeling. It's that empathy side.
All right. It's such a sort of interesting area to get into, isn't it?
Oh, it's fascinating. I could sit here and talk about it all day.
I'm thinking,
I love it.
There's questions that I've been thinking in my mind, and I think, we probably blow out time here. We did say that. We did say that if we could get going. So I'm guessing, obviously, you touch on, you do a lot of keynote speaking, and we've had some keynote speakers in. We've had Shill in.
Yes.
Yep.
He's amazing.
He is, isn't he?
He is.
How important is a high EQ or EI with public speaking?
Very much so. So Shill is somebody that I highly respect, and I work a lot with Shill in collaborations. And I think the thing that drew me to Shill in the first place was his emotional intelligence. It was his story about why he does what he does. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes him such a powerful speaker. If I have a look at any keynote speaker out there, it is without that emotional intelligence, they will not be able to connect with the audience and connect with the people in front of them. Now, anyone can literally stand up and talk in front of people, but there is a very big difference between standing in front of people behind a podium and reading from a script to standing in front of people and communicating and creating a connection and leaving them with a feeling. And great keynote speakers have really high emotional intelligence because they read the room. They are able to adapt. They're not standing up there with a script that they're just going through word for word. They're actually reading the room and saying, who is in this room at the moment and what do they need from me? What is it that they want to hear from me, that they want to take away, and how do I need to deliver it in a way that will get through to their needs and speak in the right language? And, I've seen even some of Shill's posts, which are very similar to mine in that, I will think about every part of my keynote based on the audience before I turn up. So, what dress code are they going to be in? What dress code am I going to wear that will also help them to feel comfortable? What kind of language do they use in their industry? Is their company referred to a company, an organization, an agency? It's making sure that you understand exactly who they are and what they need before you even step on stage. And that is why every keynote speaker, if you're going to be really successful in that field, you need to have emotional intelligence.
That just sounds like you need it for absolutely everything in life, really.
Oh, you do. You have to have it. Everyone has to have it. Just get it.
So with your keynotes then, I seen you speak at Dave Clare's Business Evolution Summit.
Yeah, Dave's another amazing one.
Did you have a sort of script or keynote that you wanted to do, but then you change and adapt and tweak it midway through?
I design my keynotes a little bit different. Right. So I am not as structured. So I love speaking. I absolutely love it. So I've got a bit of an advantage in that when I'm prepping for a keynote speaker, that was a bit of a mind map. What is it? When I'm prepping for a keynote, I'm excited. I've got the adrenaline pumping. I cannot wait to get on that stage where I know I'm using Shill a lot as an example, but he, is someone completely different who every time he steps up on that keynote, he's facing his biggest fear. So his prep for it is going to be completely different to my prep for it. For my prep, say for instance, for Dave's, I sat down and had a chat with Dave and said, tell me who the audience is, what background are they coming from? So I knew that there was a lot of small business owners in there. They were coming along for the Business Evolution Summit, so I knew what they were coming along for, what they were looking to learn. I was there. What we approached was we want to give them a taste of EI and kind of hit them with a bit of, interest in all areas. Did I script that? Absolutely not. So I've kind of looked and gone, okay, there's 5 areas. Here are some of the things in the areas. I'm just going to get up and talk and adjust as I go. And it is about looking at the crowd and going, okay, as you know, I was in the last session of the day, so that is very different to how you would deliver one first thing in the morning because you're coming off that paper at the end of the day. They're exhausted. They're mentally drained. So you'll know that I started it by getting everyone up and moving around and then how quickly to move on. And even though I had a workbook there, I could read the crowd knowing that there's no way I'm going to walk them through this whole workbook because they are done. So it is about changing. So in that one, yes, I absolutely changed it. Did I have a rough idea of what I was going to run through? Yes. but you have to be adaptable, on your feet, ready to change for the audience.
But there's a lot of keynote speakers now thinking, damn it.
Yeah. And look, there are some amazing keynote speakers out there that have 2 or 3 keynotes that they roll out and know them word for word and have worked on them with so much detail that they can get up and deliver it every single time. And there's no cookie cutter approach for a keynote. Everybody's going to be different. My style is more of I like to adapt as I go to the audience.
Yeah, awesome. So tell us, what are you excited about today in your business? What's happening that's putting a smile on your face, apart from changing everybody's lives?
Oh, there's so much happening. I'm really pumped. I think that 2020 has been a challenging year for everyone. The biggest thing for me is that what COVID has done, the silver lining to COVID, if there was one, is that it's made everyone stop and pause and actually look at people, look at emotional intelligence, look at people's mindsets and the impact that they have on it. So I'm excited that emotional intelligence is getting the focus that it needs, and that businesses and organizations are finally not having their full attention on the bottom line. They're putting their attention on their people as well. So that's one thing I'm really excited about. The second thing I am super excited about is I'm about to go into partnership with another company that we're running a program for individuals that are midlife and just lost their identity. And it's something I've wanted to do for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't worked that closely with individuals in my business to date. It's more larger groups. So I'm really excited to be able to work with an elite group of individuals that are ready to really, really take it up a level and find their true identity and completely change their life.
Awesome. So when's that going to start?
We're currently running a pilot research program at the moment for the next 12 weeks. The first intake of it will be in February, and it's Rising Queens. So it's an affiliation to the current Rising Kings program that's out there, quite a successful program that's out there at the moment. And there's been a lot of jealous wives and partners out there that have watched their partner transform through Rising Kings that have asked for a Rising Queens version. So it's coming.
Cool. And it's just a ladies program?
So Rising Kings is for the men's and Rising Queens is for the ladies.
Cool. Exciting.
But yeah, I am. I'm super excited. And I have to say, the gentleman, Ben Salkelt, that I'm actually partnering with in the business, he would easily be in my top 5 of most inspirational people I've met. So I think to work with people like that is just really exciting.
Yeah, I bet it is. I bet it is. So what 3 tips can we give the listeners that they can use now to recognize their emotions and also learn how to use them more efficiently?
3 tips. My first one would be ask yourself why. Just ask yourself why you are doing everything that you do, why you make that decision, why you get up out of bed in the morning, why you send that email, why you're going to that meeting, why you're living where you live. Really question yourself and understand your core purpose and own it more than anything. Don't be thinking that you're sacrificing. Don't be thinking you are where you are in life because of somebody else or somebody else's decisions. Own who you are and know your why. The second one that I would say is pause. Just the power of the pause is, it does so much. Pausing for us gives ourselves a chance to actually tap into our subconscious mind more often and really take a breath and think about what we're about to say or do. But pausing also helps other people to do the same thing. It helps them to actually get into their subconscious mind. And us pausing means that we will learn so much more about the people around us. So that would be the second thing. The third thing that I would say is learn empathy. Empathy is just the most powerful skill out there. So I would say take the time, as we said before, to be able to, next time you're in front of somebody who is in a highly emotional state, instead of instantly responding with that default of calm down or, that opposite reaction, is actually recalling the last time that you were in that highly emotional state at that severity level, and what was the worst thing that somebody could say and what was the best thing that somebody could say.
I've only just recently worked out what empathy is, like literally in the last 18 months to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So how does anybody out there that doesn't know what empathy is, how do they learn it?
How do they learn it? Look, empathy and sympathy, as we said, are completely different. Learning it, I would say, do your research first. You can jump onto my website. There's actually a video about empathy on there. But I think understand the true meaning of empathy first, and then it takes practice. It really does. So be able to identify yourself in those highly emotional states, and even think back to, when was the last time your partner or your kids or your work colleague was in that was feeling extreme anger or extreme excitement, and how did you respond in that situation? I think if you follow those 4 simple steps just to recall and then identify the worst thing and the best thing, that is the best place to start with empathy.
Awesome. So I like to finish on my couple of little questions that I always ask everybody, but I'm going to ask you one more question first. So what kind of mentors and coaches have you had throughout your career to get to where you are?
Amazing ones. I'm a big believer in you should have a number of mentors and coaches at one time. There's a big difference between a mentor and coach. I'll probably touch on that first.
Yep.
A mentor is somebody who has a specific skill that you really admire and you want to learn from. So a mentor has that specific skill and you're going to them to learn that skill from them. Where a coach is somebody who doesn't need to have the skill at all. A coach just asks really fantastic questions and can motivate you and get you driven, because ultimately we always have the answer within us. They just help you to find that answer. So very different mentor and coaches. The mentor and coaches that I've had along the way, there's one of my mentors was a boss at one point, and she was an amazing boss that I had, and I really looked up to her and admired her, and she is still a really big mentor to me along the way. So she's my grounding mentor. She was that person that helped me to really question how I was responding in a situation and bring me back down to ground. I've got a business mentor in not so much somebody that comes into my business, but somebody who runs a very successful business that I admire. And he's my person that I call when I'm trying to think of any business decisions or stuff like that. So, and he's actually been a good friend and that for a very, very long time.
He's in Perth then,
Yeah, he is in Perth. So he's actually in the insurance industry.
Right.
He's my financial advisor as well.
Right.
But I think there are so many different mentors that you meet along the way. In that, if I'm drawn to somebody, I ask myself, what is it about them that I'm drawn to? Like, what is it that they do so well that I would love to learn from? So I think for me, I will pick up mentors and may not even give them the mentor label, but I will find someone and think, I want to learn how they do that. And I'll spend time with them to learn how they do that. But I think it's also equally important to know when to let that mentor go as a role and move on and see what else you need. So I probably have easily, I would say, 6 or 7 mentors on the go at once where I'm trying to develop specific skills. And look, some of those come with people like Shill is somebody that I would turn to as a mentor because there's things that he does amazingly that I don't do as well. So I think, I would encourage everybody out there to have a look at the people around you and think, what is it that they do so well that you could potentially benefit from and learn, and talk to them. Ask them how they got to that stage, what they do and why they do it.
And do mentors actually need to be labelled as mentors?
No, they don't. Not at all. I think that you can learn from anybody out there. Some of the biggest learnings I've had is from people from what not to do. So I've had some leaders along the way that have not been fantastic leaders, but I'm still so thankful for crossing their paths because it's taught me what never to do.
Yeah.
So people don't need to know that they are a mentor. Equally so, I think if you ask somebody to mentor you in a specific area, it is a massive learning and motivation boost for them as well, because most people are chuffed when they hear that somebody else appreciates something that they do so much that they want to learn from them.
Sure do. They sure do. So what does a day in the life look like for you then? Have you got some sort of routine that you go through each day?
My routines are getting better. So the work I'm doing with the Rising Queens is very much around routine. So my morning at the moment is very much about I get up If you had have asked me a month ago, it would be completely different. But at the moment, I get up and I do exercise. So I do half an hour of exercise first thing in the morning.
Cool.
I then jump in and have a shower, and 60 seconds of that is a cold shower.
Yeah.
So the last part of my shower is pure cold water, which I can't believe I'm even saying it, but I actually love now.
It's getting easier in this weather, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's amazing how you feel that part where your mind takes over and you get that physical reaction of your body, of the adrenaline and the cortisone that comes through, that shock and stress reaction in your body. Just, I love it.
Yeah.
I journal now in the morning as well. So I do a daily journal just quickly on what I'm grateful for, what, my one thing for today's and what will make today awesome. I'm big about giving love, like daily acts of love as well, which is all part of Rising Queens. But probably if I put that aside, my usual routine and morning, I'm very much a structure person. I like to get stuff done. And I think that comes from the motivation side of emotional intelligence. It's all about chunking things down. So for me, it is about prepping for upcoming programs and sessions, but it is also making sure that I'm continuously creating new content and I'm learning in myself and that I'm connecting with people. They are my biggest focuses.
Yeah. Awesome. Just want to go back to the cold shower thing.
Yes.
So we've been doing them for a little while now. And my wife is like the coldest person ever. She hates the cold.
I'm the same.
You met Jo, haven't
you?
you?
Yeah, I've met Jo. I hate the cold too.
Yeah. So she's just started doing the cold shower things, and every now and again on the morning I just hear.
So in order for me to do it, I stand under the shower and do my wash and everything with the hot water. And then without trying to move, I reach my hand behind, keeping under the water, turn off the hot. And I actually get an adrenaline kick now before I even do it. I'm like, yes, let's do this. And when that first hit of cold, I have to breathe through it. So I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4. But this morning I've mixed it up, Neil, because one of the ladies in the group said that she reckons cold water on your face is better than even any anti-aging serum. So
really?
I did 30 seconds running down my back, my head and my back, and then I turned around, which was my biggest fear, and did 30 seconds of the pure cold water on my face and my front. And I feel amazing when I get out.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It is. It completely changes your day.
Yeah, it does. I soap myself up, then I put it on cold, and then I wash the soap off with the cold.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Gets in all the crevices.
I don't know if I could do that one because I've got to stand really still. I'm like, just stand still and breathe through it.
The movement helps.
The movement doesn't help for me because if I move, that cold water hits another part of my body and I'm like, oh. But I think I'll work up to that.
Yeah.
So I'm planning on getting that minute higher. I think I hate the cold, and I've always looked at those people that do ice baths and think you must be insane.
Yeah.
But the temptation is growing.
Yeah. I'm tempted to do one of them.
Maybe we'll have to organise a big.
Yeah, I know. I had some guests on
pool
the other week, Jen McMahon and Annie Simpson from Modern People.
Yes.
And they're doing something very soon, and there's going to be ice bathing involved, and they've invited us down.
It.
So I'll make sure you get your invite.
Well, I work with Jen McMahon and Annie Simpson. Yeah, so I'm part of Modern People, but I'm also one of the experts on their panel that rolls out their program. So
wicked.
I love those ladies.
So
They're
you'll
absolutely
be there.
amazing.
You'll be there at the
I'll
event.
be there.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So my 2 favorite questions are: what are your 3 favorite books?
Oh, see, I'm not a great person for this question, and I'll tell you why. Because my business is 100% spent in mind work, when I read a book, I like to pick up a fiction book.
Really?
Yes. So that is my switch off time. So I will, do a lot of reading of, I do a lot of the Neuroscience News, which is a newsletter that comes out every day, which I just love. And I do my reading in that. I do my reading through the news and what's happening in that space from a work point of view and from a mind point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I'll skim through other inspiration or other people's books, but I love picking up a good fiction book. And that is my switch off from work. That is my chance to switch off my mind and the emotional intelligence side and just get buried in a great novel.
Go on then, give us your novel.
Okay, so I'm a saga person. I love a good book about back in the war days or anything like that. I love a good chick flick book. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm actually not a favorite person. So to roll off favorites is extremely hard. I couldn't even tell you my favorite food, but I tell you, I do love, oh gosh, see, I can't even think of the name of it. What is Scarlett O'Hara?
Scarlett O'Hara. Never heard of her. Is she a novel writer?
No. Scarlett's the main character. Oh, what is that book called? No idea. It's very famous. It's a movie. All the listeners are going to be sitting there going, oh, of course it's this. Yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I got nothing. But the latest one I'm reading at the moment is all set in Paris just after the war. So, there is something about the war and how it played out on the Jews that just absolutely horrifies me and fascinates me.
Nice.
So I find myself reading a lot of books around France and Germany and Paris set back in the war days.
Interesting. So you're the first guest I've had on the show that didn't come up with like personal development books or business books.
And
So
isn't it funny because I work in emotional intelligence. That's crazy.
It's good.
But
And you did say you're not a favourite person, but I was going to ask you, my next question is, what's your favourite restaurant in Perth?
I can tell you that actually. My favourite restaurant in Perth by all absolutely is Nobu.
Nobu.
Love
Awesome.
Nobu.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. I love Japanese food, so I'm really into that. But it is interesting because I actually have this conversation all the time. I think in order to have favorites, and we'll test this out and I'll get you tested out on other listeners that come in.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, people that love change, that absolutely love change and sometimes too much change, don't tend to have favorites. So test it out. So, yeah, I found a lot of people that struggle with change are people that can tell you instant favorites. So if they can go, yep, this is my favorite, this is my favorite. And it's usually people that when they go to a restaurant order the same meal every time.
Yeah.
They're generally people that aren't wired to love change as much as others, where I would change just for the sake of changing.
To be fair, the question does throw people off because they're like, oh, my 3 favourite books. Oh, what's that one with them? Oh, what are they called?
Yeah.
So it does generally throw people off.
So those people are probably people that handle change better, where if you ask the question and people are like, yep, bam, 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 they're usually people that are very routine and repetitive and aren't as open to major change.
Amy, I love catching up with you today. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved our chat.
No problem. Join us next week on the show. And remember, every master was once a disaster and every winner was once a beginner. Thanks for joining us on the Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast. Hit the subscribe button and connect with me on Facebook, the Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast, Instagram, Neil Gibb Pep Talk, and LinkedIn, Neil Gibb.